We've said this before, that A.E.'s writings are scriptural, but not only Christian, although the Sunday school tends to seep through, and his imagery is biblical, but he brings his own artist's view of the world. Light is crucially important in A.E.'s writing, and shades of light. And not only the light that emanates from the sun, A.E. is very much aware of an inner light that people can access and illuminate other people. And very much A.E. was on an inner pilgrimage, and he believed that we all could access boundless reservoirs of energy and goodness, and that we should indeed help ourselves and not wait to be spoon-fed, and help others. And I think that he believed that the way that we could increase our energy levels, increase our goodness, and be better citizens, artistically, economically, socially, would be by, again, the idea coming from the Bible, just to be still and know that I am whatever God means to you. I think in this part of the world, we have a very specific notion of God, and the word God puts people off. But, in the same paragraph or in the same page as A.E. would use the word God, he also used the word foreseer with a capital F. He also used the term mother, the great mother, nature. So let's not get overly put off by terminology that causes knee-jerk reactions, because I think that A.E. certainly learned a lot from his Christian upbringing, but he was able to, and not many were, really, some were, but not many were, able to embrace Eastern mysticism and Buddhism and other views of what a God. When I was growing up in Crossmaglen, one of the worst things that you could possibly do was dabble in the occult. Aleister Crowley was hated more in the Catholic milieu that I was brought up, more than Oliver Cromwell. I don't know why, and I know but now I feel that I have the freedom to, if nobody tells the bishop up on the hill there or the archbishop, that I actually have the freedom to go and explore other ideas. So the whole idea of this part is that I read some sections of The Hero in Man, and then Marianne has a microphone, and we're going to get you just to respond or reflect. And, you know, you don't have to, but I do want you to allow these words to wash over you. So, The Hero in Man by A.E. George Russell. There sometimes comes on us a mood of strange reverence for people and things which, less contemplative hours, we hold to be unworthy. And in such moments, we may set side by side the head of Christ and the head of an outcast, and there is an equal radiance around each, which makes of the darker face a shadow, and is itself a shadow around the head of light. We feel a fundamental unity of purpose in their presence here, and would as willingly pay homage to the one who has fallen as to him who has become a master of life. I know that immemorial order decrees that the laurel and the crown be given only to the victor. But in those moments I speak of, a profound intuition changes the decree and sets the aureole on both alike. We feel such deep pity for the fallen that there must needs be a justice in it. For these diviner feelings are wise in themselves and do not vaguely arise. They are lights from the Father. A justice lies in uttermost pity and forgiveness, even when we seem to ourselves to be most deeply wronged. Or why is it that the awakening of resentment or hate brings such swift contrition? We are ever self-condemned, and the dark thought which went forth in us, brooding revenge, when suddenly smitten by the light, withdraws and hides within itself in awful penitence. In asking myself why it is that the meanest are safe from our condemnation, when we sit on the true seat of judgment in the heart, it seemed to me that their shield was the sense we have of a nobility hidden in them under the cover of ignoble things, that their present darkness was the result of some too weighty heroic labour undertaken long ago by the human spirit, that it was the consecration of past purpose which played human spirit, that it was the consecration of past purpose which played with such a tender light about their ruined lives, and it was more pathetic because the nobleness was all unknown to the fallen, and the heroic cause of so much pain was forgotten in life's prison house. While feeling the service to us of the great ethicals, great ideals which have been formulated by men, I think that the idea of justice, intellectually conceived, tends to beget a certain hardness of the heart. It is true that men have done wrong, hence their pain. But back of all this, there is something infinitely soothing, a light which does not wound, which says no harsh thing, even although the darkest of spirits turns to it in its agony. For the darkest of human spirit has still around him this first glory which shines from a deeper being within, whose history may be told as the legend of the hero in man. So if I could just pause there for a second, and if I could tee you up for your comments and reflections by saying that clearly our friend, our mentor, who is very much still with us in his art and his legacy, his economic legacy, and the inspiration for the beautiful pieces of art we have on the walls here, that clearly A.E. George Russell had some sympathy for the fallen, for fallen women and fallen men. And not always in our history have those who should have had sympathy or understanding for the fallen demonstrated that sympathy. And just to bear in mind that, it is true that, justice is a good concept, but when it's implemented to its full logical and intellectual rigor by more than often men who, haven't fallen or haven't been caught up in issues that led some of the people that find themselves in front of the courts, like drug addiction, like alcoholism, like poverty, like violence, gang, that kind of thing. And so, I was just thinking, to bring it right up to date, that I was listening to a gentleman talking about the blockades in the centre of Dublin, and I genuinely believe that it was good to hear the local vernacular coming across on the TV screen, and that the person definitely had an element of truth in what he was saying, that the likes of himself cannot afford to continue if the price of fuel is twice as high. And that was the good part of the righteous part of what he was saying. But there was another part where he threatened to close the country down, and he also said that he would take the smile off the government's face, and I think that, so he showed a very clear understanding of what was right and what wasn't right. But then there was this darker, the shadow part coming to the fore, and I think that A.E. is indicating that, we all have a darker side to our human makeup, to our inner being, but that we all have the possibility of accessing the hero within each and every one of us, and that hero is not going to be forced out into the harsh light of day. It's more through engaging with the less scientific, the less logical faculties, the less gripping part of our makeup. So could I invite any one of you to let me know if you would like to make a comment on this notion that AE has been writing about so far, the hero in man and where we see it. So we've got Patrick here, if we can get the microphone. Patrick O'Donnell.
Oh, thanks. So one of the things that's interesting, Réamonn, in your commentary and your reading from that piece is that AE is talking about awakening levels of our being. So AE is being talking to being. One of his best works is The National Being. And so there's a sense in which we have a level, as we are beings, we're not machines, we're not robots, as we have levels to us as beings, we have this potentiality, this core, this light, this luminosity, which is the hero in man. And we can evoke it through this kind of meditative prose, which is kind of like a shimmering jewel where light is flashing off the different phrases. And it's trying not to talk just to the rational mind or the emotional side, but talk to the facets of our being to help us. While it takes a bit of time to get used to the music of his prose, to get that the facets of our being is being illuminated by this multifaceted prose to help awaken levels of our own potential to access the hero in man. So, I mean, that's when he has that phrase, it shines from a deeper being within. There's that sense of, don't just stay on the surface of life. Go into the mystery of the fact that you are a being, and as a being, you're more complex than AI or machines or all the different ways that our social world is tarnished by a shallowness, by a surface consciousness. It's an appeal to this mystery of which is the ultimate mystery, I think, of life, is that we are a being. We're not a machine. We're not a machine. We're not something that's being replicated by large language models. We're authentic in a way that artificialness of artificial intelligence, which is our current iteration of the machine mind, can't encompass us. So we go to AE to be pointed to levels of consciousness that we have to awaken that make us live on a fuller level and not feel so oppressed by these shallow machine-based technologies that are the curse of the present moment.
Agreed. And it's through contemplation, quiet, that we might have some chance of accessing this being. And it's definitely for me, for AE, for sure, it's not just human beings. It's all being. And one of the things that is causing chaos in the world today is that we think that this was all designed for our use and benefit. We think that the sun came into being to provide for us. The truth of the matter is that the sun, could emit a flare larger than some of the flares that it emits regularly that would just wipe us all off the face of the earth. And so, it's all beings. It's the Great Mother herself. The plants, the trees, the small creatures. But, we think that that's all for our use and benefit. So just before I read on another piece, we've got a lady down at the back.
Yeah, I'll stand. Patrick, thank you for bringing up artificial intelligence. AI is not all bad. There is a good side of AI. I wrote an article maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It broke down intelligence into 3 types: your spiritual intelligence, your natural intelligence, and then this artificial intelligence. Now, if you're clever enough, you can use AI to elevate your creativity and elevate your spirituality. And if you want to read more, it's all free online. And, you know, you're talking about being. I think you're referring to soul. We're made up of a body, and we leave this body behind. It's not infinite. We will die if we're lucky in our 80s, in our 90s. But then you have the soul, and it lives for eternity. And I think A. Russell is a model I'm going to look at. I went to a meeting with, it was in memory of John Moriarty. And John Moriarty, people are looking on as an alternative to the Bible and as an alternative to live a happy life, a live a spiritual life. I think AI and John Moriarty have a lot in common. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree entirely, and I would be surprised if John Moriarty hadn't read A.E. Russell. He read everything else in the mountains of books that he had around him on the floor. He didn't use shelves, John Moriarty. He had sky risers of books all around him on the floor in his room. And I'd be surprised if John Moriarty and A.E. hadn't benefited as Yeats did from the daddy of them all, William Blake. But let's read one more paragraph and then I'll stop and take some more comments. Among the many immortals with whom ancient myth peopled the spiritual sphere of humanity are some figures which draw to themselves a more profound tenderness than the rest. Not Aphrodite, rising in beauty from the fairy foam of the first seas, not Apollo with the sweetest singing, laughter and youth, not the wielder of the lightning could exact the reverence accorded to the lonely Titan chained on the mountain, or to that bowed figure heavy with the burden of the sins of the world. For the brighter divinities had no part in the labour of man, no such intimate relation with the wherefore of his own existence, so full of struggle. The more radiant figures are prophecies to him of his destiny, but the Titan and the Christ are a revelation of his more immediate state, their giant sorrows companion his own. And in contemplating them, he awakens what is noblest in his own nature, or in other words, in understanding their divine heroism, he understands himself. For this, in truth, it seems to me to mean all knowledge is a revelation of the self to the self, and our deepest comprehension of the seemingly apart divine is also our furthest inroad to self-knowledge. Prometheus, Christ are in every heart. The story of one is the story of all. The Titan and the crucified are humanity. There's a lot there. And, maybe we could think, who are the outcast titans chained to the side of a mountain with a powerful eagle flying down to devour its liver? Now, thankfully, the liver regenerates, and that particular titan, Prometheus, was immortal. Who have we chained to the side of a mountain today and exposed their liver for eagles to savage devour, only for the same to happen the following day? I just say that as something that might bring a thought to the fore. So anybody want to come in on that?
Women have been chained, and I represent a global, it's called the Woman for Women initiative, and we've women all around the world highlighting the suffering of women and children. And it's been exposed to modern technology, AI, again, exploiting real and fake news. So yeah, I believe women are.
Yeah, for sure. There are many individuals, peoples, communities, countries that are that regrettably, and the logic part, which is the opposite to what AE is speaking about here, this hero in man, it's logic that has got us mainly. It's not the people who are giving rise to all the war that is happening in the world. They're not the poets. They're not the artists. They're the boys and girls who were brought up in an education system that insisted that they disconnect the right hemisphere of their brain, really, and then turn it back on every so often when we're not doing important stuff, like when we're going to concerts and things like that. It's all right to turn it back on, but it's this black, white, right, wrong, binary approach. And when you observe it from a distance, there are those in the world today that can rationalize the worst imaginable horror and then inflict it on others less able to fight or fend for themselves. Dara?
It's more a question, that how angry was he's bound to be very angry, because where we live at the back of our house, there's a graveyard, and there's St. Mark's graveyard. People that were killed in the train disaster, all the children that were killed, 150, 60, and then the workhouse people, and then you come to the house where the Russells lived. But behind that, and he'd have been brought up with that, they say between nearly 1,000 people are in the Armagh famine graveyard. People like, I was thinking one gentleman out here, school teacher, and he says, we don't have a famine. He was telling me about the one down in Cashel, and he says they have the Irish word religot on it. We should get that. But we found all these famine graves around Armagh, up in the Bragg there. But he must have been very angry. He was brought up that his parents were in the workhouse, and just behind the workhouse, 100 yards away, there's the famine graveyard, 1,000 people at least buried. Now, the Church of Ireland and Russell's people, they planted yew trees. And when you go there now, they're reached their full height. There's a few gaps, but the grave itself is about over 100 yards long along the Callan or the Folly River. And I'm just thinking that he had all this anger, and all his books and his writing are very soft spoken, but yet he's very practical. He's saying, set up the co-op. And then when he was leaving Ireland, he said to Frank O'Connor, I'm getting out of here. You know, the Free Staters have done more damage to the co-ops than the Black and Tans ever did. He was an angry man, but he spoke softly. But he has left so much behind. But I think in Armagh that the only people that go there in September on the Famine Day, myself and Anne, and she recites Ivan Boland's poem, you know, and then his parents are buried up at the top of St. Mark's in the graveyard as well, which should be a place of pilgrimage. You know, it should be like he is so close to us. But anyway, the question I was going to ask, James Stephens, the Crock of Gold, is there a connection there really, or he'd be a great model for?
Well, do you know something? I was thinking when you were speaking, Dara, and you always make a lot of sense, that he was able to alchemize his anger and put it to, or channel his energies. And, you know, will any of us, some of us in this room have done great deeds in many scenarios and sectors. It's hard to go past AE for his productivity, you know, in so many different areas of life, artistically, socially, philosophically. But on the Crock of Gold, Patrick, do you have anything to?
What's the question exactly?
Well, the question is based on the, you know, the philosopher. All I remember about the Crock of Gold was the tall philosopher and the small one was, or the skinny one. You know,
Right.
It was very humorous, and I saw the play, but it was in the Gaiety, and it only got 10 minutes. It was rubbish. It was very poor.
I think
I Stevens as well.
Was AE? Was AE?
What's a chemist?
Oh, sorry. Well, this was part of the early presentation. So AE is the model for the character of the philosopher, because he was a very good friend of James Stephens. Stephens began writing articles in Sinn Féin, Arthur Griffith's paper, called using the character of the philosopher based on AE, because James Stephens began going to AE salons in Rathgar from 1907 on. So he started turning AE into a character into his writing, and then carried on into his great novel, The Crock of Gold. Do you want to say anything else, Laura? Go ahead. Sorry.
So this morning I mentioned that, in Simone Thierry's description of James Stephens' writing, she quotes a passage from the Demigods, actually, that where Angus Og is lamenting the progress of thought and how it's killing that love of nature. And so when you asked Raymond, who's chained to the mountainside, sometimes I think we chain ourselves to that mountainside when we are caught in conventional thought about who is emanating light, you know, who is more valuable than another person. And when we're not recognizing the dignity and humanity of everyone, then that we're not progressing. And so it's comforting to hear the passage in the beginning where you read that even the one who is fallen is emanating light. And I just feel like that's one of the things that I liked about AE's philosophy, about that, how we're all on that pilgrimage. It's a pilgrimage of the soul, and that we're constantly trying to evolve into our best self. And so that seemed to fit in that even for the fallen, there's hope. And I think sometimes we just get wrapped up in judging who has fallen farther than another, and comparing, and not focusing on that journey that we're all making, and trying to bring each other up.
Agreed. There was a lot of darkness in the world when A.E. was developing his ideas. The First World War being the biggest source of darkness. So as we're drawn to the end of this session, because we're walking to the museum for our next 2 sessions, I'm going to read just a few more paragraphs, and then after that, I definitely want to give Dara the opportunity to just say something about the paintings, and if the hero in man is anywhere in these works. Sorry, but just to tee you up on that, let me read a wee bit, it'll give you a chance. If then we consider them as representing the human spirit and disentangle from the myths their meaning, we shall find that whatever reverence is due to that heroic love which descended from heaven for the redeeming of the lower nature must be paid to every human being. Christ is incarnate in all humanity. Prometheus is bound forever within us. They are the same. They are a host, and the divine incarnation was not spoken of one, but of all those who, descending into the lower world, tried to change it into the divine image and to wrest out of chaos a kingdom for the empire of light. The angels saw below them in chaos a senseless rout, blind with elemental passion, forever warring with discordant cries, which broke in upon the world of divine beauty, and that the pain might depart, they grew rebellious in the Master's peace, and descending to earth, the angelic lights were crucified in men, leaving so radiant worlds such a light of beauty, for earth's grey twilight filled with tears, that through this elemental life might breathe the starry music brought from him. If the foreseer be a true name for the Titan, it follows that in the host which he represents was a light which well foreknew all the dark paths of its journey, foreseeing the bitter struggle with a hostile nature, but foreseeing perhaps again a distant glory o'er the hills of sorrow, and that chaos, divine and transformed, with only gentle breathing, lit up by the Christ soul of the universe. There is a transforming power in the thought itself. We can no longer condemn the fallen. They who laid aside their thrones of ancient power, their spirit ecstasy and beauty on such a mission. Perhaps those who sank lowest did so to raise a greater burden, and of these most fallen it may, in the hour of their resurrection, be said, the last shall be first. So these are powerful lines and evocative words, and they're very scriptural and maybe to be read a line at a time or a paragraph per day. So as we draw to a conclusion, Dara, would you mind just saying a line or two, a word or two about the inspiration for these magnificent paintings that we have on display in this excellent space for art?
So if you look at all those paintings there, I remembered then, the candle came up here with the wick in it, and the flame, and then the flame became these butterfly wings. But that is pure AE, because when AE looked into the flax strain, he saw the dragonflies and he saw the butterflies. So he saw the purples and the sort of, the blues and all that sort of magical purples that you see in all his paintings. It was coming straight from natural science. Mullen here was talking about the natural science. He was borrowing the colours in his paintings and probably in his philosophy, because despite his anger that I thought he must have had in bucket loads, he had that gentleness, that empathy with nature and with his fellow human beings.
I will always remember A.E. describing a dragonfly breaking out of the chrysalis, I think it is. And what must the dragonfly have thought when it got its first glimpse of its beautiful plumage? And plumage is the word he used, even though insects don't have plumage. But when it comes to a dragonfly, it is beautiful. And let's just ask ourselves, what must a dragonfly think when it is breaking out of its chrysalis and it sees the wings and the colour and the light for the first time? And I think what A was getting at was that every so often, especially in the moments of stillness, that you can get flickers of the non-physical. You can get intimations of something greater that are not available to us when we're busy doing the doing instead of being the being.